since the Obama administration began, people are even less in favor of banning these kind of assault weapons.
All the more reason for a leader to step forward.
Yeah, but they're not going to, because they're going to have political death on it. And it's tragic to think that we can't even have the conversation.
Welcome to Newsbeast. We've got Tina Brown and Mike Daly on the set. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we are now several days out from the mass shooting in Aurora, and yet still it has this fixation on the American mind. Tina, what did you think looking at the killer's first appearance in court yesterday?
Well, he looked absolutely out of it. I mean, he looked so completely psychotically confused, really, and out of it, and dazed, obviously heavily medicated. But I was interested that he looked startled when he was charged with murder. I mean, I almost wonder in his mind whether he's still in his fantasy, that it actually wasn't real people that he was killing.
Right.
But I do think as well, we haven't really heard enough about what kind of a mental illness this guy could possibly have, because he clearly has had a psychotic break. And it is incredible how these sick people who live amongst us, and we just don't know that they're there. I mean, It's always the same. They're loners, they're isolated. And of course, I do think the computer, the wired culture, in a sense, enables more and more, not that it causes it, but it does enable these solitary, broken people, in a sense, to kind of go more and more into themselves and more developing these fantasy lives. Yeah. And I'm sure that's why we're seeing, it feels like, such a lot of them.
Let's talk a little bit,
likely,
actually, more deeply about the coverage of the killing, because last night on Anderson Cooper made a very conscious decision in response, really, I think, to viewer requests to not even name the killer. For fear of glorifying and taking the attention away from the victim. So it does become a question of coverage. Do you glorify someone by naming them in an incident like this?
Well, of course, you could argue this is exactly what he wanted. I mean, this desperate desire to create an imagery about himself that will last, obviously feeling so small and so isolated and so alienated that there's this desire to kind of be a hero in the culture in some awful way. It's difficult, though, not to focus on the perpetrators of these deeds. I mean, we do remember Klebold and Harris, and we don't remember the names of the kids he killed, which is terrible, but it is a fact. I mean, we are obsessed and fascinated by the aberrant in our society. It's very hard not to wonder who is the monster in our midst, and that inevitably makes them far more compelling to read about than the people who've been killed.
But also, I think when you do use his name, there's a responsibility that you use it for a reason. I mean, what we're supposed to do in addressing something like this is, let's try to see it so it doesn't happen again.
That's right.
What can we learn from this? How can we stop this from happening again? We don't tend to do that. We tend to roll out all the anchor people and, make a big thing out of it. I mean, it was like a repeat of Columbine. They had the TV sets and everything. And what I think that...
Well, it's almost like a collective guilt that you feel about, here was this person who was clearly going crazy, but we didn't notice. I mean, even... I'm sure the people around him all feel that, in a sense, which is what is I as a neighbor? Why didn't I know that this could possibly have happened? As we felt the same way with Jared Loughner.
And that's exactly right. I mean, that being the most recent incident. And like the wake of the Gabrielle Giffords shooting, there is this mourning, there's this shock of recognition, but then there's the question, what do we do next? There was calls, for example, on these, to legislate not against guns, but maybe put a focus on ammunition or these high-capacity cartridges. And yet it does seem that we're going to have a period of mourning without any follow-through, no question of action. Is that appropriate, or should we be talking about ways that we could perhaps make it more difficult for someone like this to get their hands on weapons?
Leadership now. Now's the time for a leader to step up and say, this is nuts. That there is no reason to have a weapon like that. To have an assault rifle with a 100-round magazine in the middle of a supposedly civilized society, that's insanity. And if you, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, but what we're seeing is that since the Obama administration began, people are even less in favor of banning these kind of assault weapons.
All the more reason for a leader to step forward.
Yeah, but they're not going to, because they're going to have political death on it. And it's tragic to think that we can't even have the conversation politically, because it's considered such a toxic issue.
But you can have it. See, that's the whole point. You can. I mean, he's sitting there talking about how brave these kids are in the middle of gunfire. This girl putting her finger on the wound while bullets are going everywhere, and he doesn't have the cojones to stand up and talk about gun control? Because political danger? I mean, come on.
I personally find it grotesque. I mean, I think that actually Bloomberg has been tremendously good on this one.
I don't understand why the police officers across this country don't stand up collectively and say, we're going to go on strike. We're not going to protect you unless you, the public, through your legislature, do what's required to keep us safe.
He's stepped out and said, where are Romney? Where are Obama? The fact that they can't even raise it because of the terror of the NRA is a disgusting thing, and actually just shows again the toxic aspect of money in our politics. It's a terrible fear of what the NRA will do to you.
I think that's exactly right, especially in a presidential year.
And you just got to start hammering at him. And that's what Bloomberg does. I mean, he did it with smoking. I mean, every time a cop gets shot, he goes to the emergency room. And there's another cop who's got shot. There's another spouse standing there terrified. There's there's kids at home. And, and he just keeps at it. And I think Obama, when he came out of seeing those people who were shot, he actually started talking about violence. And he kind of edged towards almost saying something, then he pulled himself back. But you could see how filled he was with actual emotion after being there. And then Bloomberg's done that 20 times.
I do think that Obama would create a lot of respect for saying it because it's such a doomed political issue in a way. I mean, it's so time for people to actually take a stand and take that
risk.
hit.
Yeah, why
Because
not?
I think that would actually generate respect.
Yeah, and I mean, if you stand up and say, listen, I know it's political suicide. I know you all love your guns, but this is insanity. And I went there and I saw these kids and I saw these shot kids and I saw a guy with a bullet in his head who's got a pregnant wife. And what, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's what he should do.
Tina, final word.
Suicide, craziness.
Courage.
Morning. That's all for us at Newsbeast. We'll see you tomorrow.